Good evening or good night, depending on where you are, and welcome to our last virtual class meeting. I'm very happy to be here with you and sharing this space of about 40 minutes to an hour that we have to talk about some of the things that are going on in the class. And I especially wanted to have this meeting with you to talk a little bit about the final project, which is the big activity that we're working on, that we have been working on throughout the semester or the term, I should say, um, and that it's due this week. So basically what I want to go over with you in today's session is to talk a little bit about marketing evaluation and control. This is something that we're going to talk more about more in depth next week, but it's part of your final project. And so I want to give an introduction to this topic that we'll go more in depth into next week, just so that you have a better idea on how to approach it. And if you have any questions about that, of course, I'm here to answer them for you, or you can always just send me an email. And as part of that, we're going to talk about marketing metrics. And specifically, we're going to be talking about some kinds of tests or experiments that we can do in marketing to test marketing stimuli and to test marketing tactics and strategies, such as A/B tests or multivariate tests. So I think that you will find this very interesting, or I hope you do. And then we'll talk about the final project, and I'll go over some of the requirements of the final project and some tips on how to approach each one of those sections. And hopefully at the end, we'll have some time for questions if you have any at all. So let's start talking about marketing evaluation and control. And I'd like to start this topic with this quote from Peter Drucker. He's a very famous management writer and thinker. And he says, "You can't manage what you can't measure." So this can give us an idea of the importance of measurement. If we can't measure something, we can't really manage it. We can't really improve it. That's why a marketing evaluation and control, or measurement, is so important. And we define marketing evaluation as the systematic and continuous process of assessing the performance of marketing strategies and the progress that we're making towards those strategies and achieving the marketing objectives. And we'll talk a little bit about marketing objectives, but I want to highlight two important things about this definition. The first one is that this is a systematic process. That means that we have to use a systematic process to do it. You know, there has to be measures in place, and there has to be processes in place in order to measure the effectiveness of marketing strategies and the marketing plan. And it has to be continuous. Usually we tend to think about evaluation as something that happens at the very end, so that we know if we achieve our goals or not. But in reality, marketing evaluation and control should be a continuous process. We should be measuring how we're doing throughout the evolution of the marketing plan to make sure that we're on the right track and to make adjustments as needed. Because remember, marketing strategies are dynamic. Marketing strategies occur in a dynamic environment that is changing. Economic conditions are changing, consumer tastes and preferences are changing, and sometimes it's necessary to adjust and adapt even the best designed marketing strategy. So having that information through a systematic and continuous measurement process can really, really help towards that goal. And in a nutshell, this is the process that we follow to evaluate marketing actions and plans. We start with marketing objectives, and we've talked about marketing objectives before. We've talked, for example, about the characteristics of good marketing objectives in the using the SMART framework. That is, objectives that are specific, measurable, achievable, that are relevant and reasonable, and that are timely, or that have a time frame for completion. So once we have those marketing objectives established, and remember that marketing objectives have to do mostly with sales, market share, and consumer outcomes. For example, the number of new consumers that we acquire, or the number of consumers that we're able to retain from one period to another, or other types of consumer outcomes. And once we have set those marketing objectives, then we can set performance standards or benchmarks against which we are going to measure those objectives. And a lot of times those benchmarks are included in the objectives. For example, if our objective is to have a market share of 30%, then we have a benchmark against which to measure that objectives. And then we go into a more of a finely grained level and measure performance, or what we call marketing metrics. And these are related to the objectives, but these can more finely, in a more finely grained manner, measure the steps that we're taking towards the completion of those objectives. And I'll give you some examples of very commonly used marketing metrics. And then we compare the results or the progress against the standards that we set. And this is the result of the evaluation and control phase. And once we have assessed where we are at with relation to those objectives, which ones have we achieved, which ones have we made progress towards, then we can begin the marketing planning process again by setting new objectives for the next term or for the next year, or by adjusting our objectives if the plan is still ongoing. And we were talking just a second ago about marketing objectives. And this is a very important part. And this is something that I often find that some students have trouble with in developing their marketing plan. The marketing objectives are very important because this is basically the end result we want to achieve with our marketing plan. Okay, we need to have clear marketing objectives because everything else we put into our marketing plan, all the strategies that we develop in our marketing plan, all those strategies that can be target marketing strategies, product strategies, pricing strategies, distribution strategies, marketing communication strategies, all those strategies have to be aligned with the marketing objectives. All those strategies, what they do is take us to that place, take us to that goal that the marketing objective is setting. So establishing good, clear, measurable objectives is key, because this is what's going to drive the rest of your marketing plan. And as I said, marketing objectives are usually related to market. That is, for example, market share, to sales, for example, increases in sales in the quarter or in the year, and to consumer outcomes, for example, acquiring consumers, retaining consumers, increasing consumer loyalty, any sort of consumer outcome. And again, objectives should be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time limited, or as we call it, the SMART framework for developing objectives. And the marketing planning not only includes these broad, high-level objectives, it also can include strategic and tactical objectives. These are smaller objectives that, of course, follow from the overall marketing objectives, but can guide the development of specific strategies. For example, we can have advertising and communication objectives, such as increasing brand awareness, or increasing interest, or preference, or purchase intention. But these are advertising or communication objectives in this case that are aligned with the overall broad objective of increasing market share or increasing sales, or whatever it is that it's our marketing objectives. So it's important to distinguish between marketing objectives and tactic or strategic objectives, because sometimes they can get confused. And these are some commonly used marketing metrics. These are quantitative performance indicators that we use to assess marketing performance. One of the most common ones is market share. And next week, we're going to learn more about market share and why it's so widely used, and when should it be used and when it should not be used. But let me give you a preview. Market share is commonly used because it's readily available, and it's a metric that's easily understood, not only by marketers, but by pretty much anyone in the company, and especially by finance people. And it has become very commonly used. Now, the problem with market share is that there is really no direct relationship in most industries between market share and profitability. Usually, firms tend to believe that bigger market share equals more profitable or it's better. It doesn't really turn out to be this way in most cases, because gaining market share can require making significant investments that affect profitability, or it can require pricing strategies or selling strategies that can increase those sales so that market share is growing, but at the expense of profitability. So it's always important to consider market share along with other measures such as profits. Return on investment and return on marketing investment are becoming more and more widely used. And one of the reasons for this is that they're very easily understood, especially by the finance department, by the finance function in the organization. And as resources become scarce, more and more scarce in organizations, there's more pressure in marketing to provide proof that those dollars that are assigned to the marketing budget are really having an impact on the bottom line of the company. And that is exactly what return on investment and return on marketing investment do. So they're becoming very, very widely used. Another more marketing-oriented metrics that are commonly used are the Net Promoter Score that we're going to learn more about next week, customer lifetime value, which is a measure of the total value or profit that a specific customer is going to bring to the company throughout their lifetime or throughout their life cycle with the company. And finally, digital marketing metrics, which are becoming very important, especially as more and more of marketing communications and even marketing distribution moves online. So marketing metrics like likes, conversion rates, click-through rates are becoming more important. And this is one of the main advantages of digital marketing tools. They can be more easily measured than traditional marketing tools, and we can get information in a more constant way and satisfying this need for continuous market information. And this is, again, something that we're going to look more in depth next week, but I just wanted to share this with you in case you want to take a sneak peek at it this week as you're working on your final project. And when it is convenient or appropriate to use each one of these metrics, and when it's not appropriate to use them, or when should they not be used by firms. And finally, as part of this process of evaluating and measuring marketing, one topic that I like to talk about and that we're going to study more in depth next week again is what we should call them experiments, but in the context of, for example, digital marketing, they're called A/B tests or split tests. And they're basically experiments in the marketing sense and the statistical sense, in that we're trying to see what the result of changing one variable does to cause an effect on another variable. For example, we want to see whether implementing a promotion that includes a 15% coupon or a 10% discount plus free shipping coupon is more effective. So we have two options. Like many times we have in marketing, we have different ways to approach a situation, or we have different tools that we can use. And one very, very good way of finding information and getting evidence, because remember that we're practicing evidence-based marketing of what works and what doesn't, is to conduct these kinds of experiments. And they have become much easier to do through digital technologies, and especially mobile technologies. It used to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money to conduct experiments in marketing, but now we can conduct them online or electronically, or even through a mobile platform at a very low cost and very, very quickly. So it's becoming a tool that it's more and more available to marketers. So let's say that we wanted to see which one of those two options would be best in terms of redemption and in terms of increasing sales. So we want to see how a change in the format of this promotion affects sales. So what we can do is we can send the first coupon, the 15% discount coupon code, to 500 consumers, maybe that we have in our database or that we obtained a list from a database vendor. And then we send the other coupon that includes a 10% discount plus free shipping to another 500 consumers. And then we look at the redemption rates for those two coupons to see which one of these two options really have the most impact in terms of sales, in terms of redemption. And from then, we can decide which one would be best to launch to our whole market or to our target market. So we can get really good information about what works and what doesn't in a very simple way. In fact, there are actually several apps and tools, and many of them free, that you can download and set up your own A/B or split test to test different combinations of a stimuli. The multivariate tests are really just an extension of this simple A/B test that we just talked about. And this is when we combine more, two variables or more to see which one performs better. For example, we not only want to compare whether a 15% discount works better or not than a 10% discount plus free shipping, but we also want to see whether sending that coupon by email is better than sending it through text through mobile phones. So again, what we do is we form 4 groups and we select a group of consumers that are going to receive the 15% discount via email, another group of consumers that are going to receive that discount through their mobile phone, then a third group of consumers that are going to receive the other discount coupon with free shipping through email, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then we just compare which one of these 4 groups had the best redemption rate and the best sales and work better. So the only thing to be concerned about here is that, as you can see, by adding just one more variable, the number of people that we need to include in our sample really grows. And this happens as we add more and more variables. So the more variables we add, the more people that we're going to have to recruit in our sample to test these combinations. And also, the more variables that we add, the more difficult the statistical analysis and interpretation becomes. So usually just sticking to 2 variables is best, because going for 3 or more variables, it can get really tricky and really complex very, very fast. And now let's talk a little bit about the marketing plan. The format requirements are a 20-page double-spaced document. I had a question, I think it was today or yesterday, about this 20-page requirement, whether it was a hard limit or not. I would consider it more as a guideline that we want to try to stick to it as much as possible. But if you go a little bit above that, or if you end up a little bit below that, it's fine. And again, this page limit does not include appendices and reference lists. So if your marketing plan is becoming too big and it's growing too fast, what you can do is send off the information that might be like supporting information and that might not be to be there in the marketing plan on the front page, and just send it to an appendix so that you can use your space and your 20 pages or so guideline better. And the paper will be formatted as a Word document. The font size is the regular font size for any paper, between 11 or 12 points, and acceptable fonts are those that are shown there. Any regular text font that you would use for an academic paper or for a formal presentation. And remember that all factual materials, facts, figures, charts, statistics must be properly cited in AP8 format, and a reference list in AP8 format is required. And there's some, I think that they're also included in the final project description, and they're also in the course resources, in the writing resources section. There are some very nifty videos about AP document formatting and about citations and references that you can use and you can consult in developing your marketing plan project. So let's look at the contents of the marketing plan. So basically, it has 5 sections, starting with the executive summary. Although the executive summary is the first section, this is probably the last part of the marketing plan that you want to work in, because you want to have developed your marketing plan so that you can summarize what you did in your executive summary. So make sure that your executive summary is it's close to a page. Again, if it goes a little bit over or a little bit under, that's fine. But try to include the main highlights of your paper or your marketing plan in the executive summary. So the executive summary, although it's short, it should give a complete overview of everything that you did in your marketing plan. So that's why you want to wait until the very end to write it, once you have everything in place and once you can look at it and sort of give a brief overview of everything that you did. Make sure that you include, even if briefly, just mention whatever you did in each one of the sections. I often find executive summaries that do a really good description of the first parts of the situation analysis, but they don't include the part about strategy implementation. So make sure that you include or mention at least something about what you're going to do to achieve those objectives and what your main strategy recommendations are. I think I have a more detail. Yes, but we'll get there. Okay. The second part is the situation analysis. This is basically establishing where we're at right now, in terms of the product and in terms of the company and the environment. So the first thing that we want to do is to briefly describe the product or service. We don't have to go into the nitty-gritty details about the product or the service here, because that's going to be an important part of the product strategy. But this is just to make sure that we provide a good, comprehensive description of the product, so that whoever is reading this marketing plan for the first time, whether this could be a director of marketing, this could be upper management, this could be a loan officer that's approving a loan for a startup, whoever it is, they should have a very good idea of what the product or service is starting out, at the outset of the marketing plan. Then we have to state the value proposition. And remember that the value proposition is this 30-second elevator speech that basically tells consumers why they should buy your product. Okay, so basically here we're telling consumers the reasons why they should buy our product and not the competition's products. So what are those benefits? What are those problems that we're solving for consumers with this product? And how is our product different from competing products or existing products? So this is a very important part of your marketing plan. It's a very succinct, it's a very concise part, but it's very important because this is basically going to be the justification for creating this new product and selling it to consumers. Then we describe a little bit about the company, just provide some background about the company. You don't have to provide too much. Don't spend too much time or too many pages in the company. Just provide, a basic overview and whatever you need your reader to know about the company that is directly related to your product and to your marketing plan. Then you have to explain who are the main competitors of your product. And here, try to consider both direct competitors and indirect competitors, because both are competing for the same dollars from the consumers that you are targeting. So it's important to have a good idea of who you're competing against with and what are they offering. And also collaborators, if there are any. For example, if there are any important suppliers that should be mentioned, or if there are any other partners that should be mentioned and that are important for your specific products, then you should mention them as collaborator. And then we do an analysis of the business climate. And this analysis is usually done in the form of what we saw, PESTEL analysis that we studied in week 2, where we look at the political environment, the legal environment, the economic environment, the social environment, and the technological environment surrounding the firm and surrounding the product. And we identified those trends or events in the environment that could have repercussions or that could affect the marketing of our product. So again, try to be very focused on this business climate analysis to what could be relevant to your product and to your company. For example, let's talk about the economy. A recession, if it's probable and if it's likely in the short term, might result in consumers having less purchasing power, and that might impact your product, especially if it's a product that is discretionary or that consumers don't really need. But other kinds of things that are going on in the environment might not really be related to your product. For example, and again, this is just off the top of my head, let's talk about the political environment and the impeachment proceedings. Okay, so this is probably important, and it's a major event that's going on in our political environment, but that might not really have an impact on marketing your specific product. Let's say if I'm selling if I'm selling a new soft drink, that might not be really relevant and might not be really affecting how I market that soft drink. So again, be very focused on what are those trends and events in the environment that you should consider in your marketing plan, because they could affect the marketing of your product. And then we do a SWOT analysis. And remember, the SWOT analysis provides us sort of like a picture or an overview of the strengths and weaknesses of the product and the company. So it provides a good starting point to assess where we're at, and also the opportunities and threats of the environment. And remember, this is very important. Opportunities and threats are external events. They're things that happen outside the company. They're not controllable by the company, that could affect the marketing of your product. Okay, and it's important to differentiate between opportunities and strategies. This is a common mistake. Opportunity is something that occurs outside the company that could be positive. For example, consumers are becoming more health conscious. Okay, if I'm selling a new protein bar that targets health-conscious consumers, that could be an opportunity because it's something that's occurring in the environment that could be positive to my product. Okay, but I have no control over what consumers like or don't like, or what their trends are going to be. That's why it's an opportunity, because it's external and not controllable. And that's different from an opportunity, for example, to expand my product line to include beverages. That is a strategy or a tactic, because that is something that I can control. That is something internal. I can decide whether to expand my product line or not. So that would not be an opportunity in the sense of the SWOT analysis. And then summarize what are the main critical issues from your analysis of the competition, the business climate, and your SWOT analysis. What are the things that are most important to take into account when developing the marketing plan? Then the third section is deciding where do we want to go. Now that we know where we are, where do we want to go? And that's the part about objectives and analysis. And this section is generally brief, but it's very important, because what you decide here is what's going to guide every strategy that you develop in the next section. So you're going to define the marketing objectives, 2 or 3 marketing objectives, like we talked about a little bit ago, financial objectives, and you're going to try to project what are the marketing expenses that you think you would need to introduce your new product and to market new product. And again, this is an estimate. But again, the more detailed that you can do it and the more information that you can gather, the better idea that you will be able to provide about financial objectives and marketing expenses. And then the customers and target market analysis. This is very important because this is where you're going to define who are your consumers, okay? And you want to make sure that you have a very, very focused definition of who your consumers are with a lot of detail. And when we talk a lot of detail, we're talking about geographic, demographics, psychographics, and behavioral characteristics. The richer the definition of your target market, the easier it's going to be to develop marketing strategies that satisfy their needs and wants. So you want to make sure that you spend some time there thinking about that and developing that target market analysis and definition. And then we go to sort of like the meat of the project. So if you want to think about it in like a hamburger, you know, this is sort of like the meat and the rest is like, you know, the bread and the condiments. They're important, but this is really what we're going for. This is the part where you should focus more of your time and pages of your paper in developing the strategy implementation. And we start with the product and brand strategy. Specifically, what is the product strategy? What is the differentiation that your product has over competitors and over existing products in the market? Analyze your product using one of the tools that we studied in the class. For example, the product layers model. Analyze the core product, the main attributes and benefits, the augmented product, the design, packaging, labels, supplementary aspects, the color. You want to make sure that you do a very detailed analysis of your product and the decisions that you're making. For example, if you're thinking about a packaging that is attractive and that is in certain shape and has certain material, you want to make sure that that is well defined and that you have evidence to support why you're making that packaging decision. If you're talking about the label and you're talking about what information is going to go on the label, you want to make sure that it's a good detailed description of the label and that you're supporting why you're making those decisions. And then we go to probably what is the most important part of the strategy, the positioning and the positioning strategy. Remember that positioning is how consumers perceive your product in relation to the rest of competitors in the market. So it's like if we open consumers' minds and we took a look there and we saw how they think all products and all brands in a certain category are structured, that's what we would see, the positioning. We would see where exactly our product fits in relation to what's important to consumer and in relation to other competing products. So go over again about positioning strategy that we covered. If I'm not mistaken, it was week 6. So that you can develop a strong positioning statement and a positioning strategy. And then talk about the brand identity and the brand strategy. For example, what is going to be the brand name and why you selected that brand name, if you're going to use a brand symbol and why, the brand image, colors, etc. And how are you going to make sure that that brand, and remember that the brand is not only the logo, it's not only the name, the brand is everything that the product represents for consumers. Okay, the brand is the promise that you make to consumers that you are going to satisfy their needs and wants and resolve their problems. So how are you going to make sure, that's the branding strategy, how are you going to make sure that that is transmitted to consumers through the whole marketing strategy? Okay, then we go to the pricing strategy and what factors need to be considered and what should the price of the product be. And again, this could be an estimate because you might not have all the facts that you need, for example, exact cost. So its estimates are fine, but again, try to provide a target price or a price range for your product. And very importantly, what pricing strategy are you going to be using? For example, are you going to be using, if it's a new product, are you going to be using a penetration pricing strategy or a skimming pricing strategy or a oh, the name escapes me right now. A value pricing strategy. Whatever it is, you have to select one or more pricing strategies and why you think those pricing strategies are appropriate. Then we go to distribution strategies, and you're going to explain what do you need to consider in designing distribution channels? For example, the characteristics of the products, the characteristics of the market, the distributors that are available, et cetera, et cetera. The distribution channels that you would use to distribute your product to final consumers, the intermediaries that you plan to use, and the distribution intensity strategy. That can be, for example, an extensive, an exclusive, or a selective distribution intensity strategy. And then we go to marketing communication strategy, which we have been talking about. Specifically, what are the communication objectives that you have that you want to achieve? And remember that marketing objectives and communication objectives are related, but they're different. Communication objectives are things that communication can solve, and they typically have to do with things like awareness, increasing attitudes, preferences, purchase intention, okay? Things that communication can do. What promotional mix elements are you going to use and why? For example, advertising, sales promotion, digital marketing, direct marketing, product placements, and why each one of those is important in your integrated marketing communication strategies. And how will you use those tools? For example, if you're going to use sales promotions, what are you planning to use? Are you going to use coupons? Are you going to use discounts? Are you going to use package premiums? What tools are you going to use and how are you going to use them? If you're going to use digital marketing tools or not, and what is going to be your message strategy? That is, what is it that you want to communicate, or your unique selling proposition as we study using those communication methods. And finally, other resources, if applicable. For example, if you think that you might need to do market research to fine-tune some aspects of your marketing strategy or to gather more information, discuss that there. And then discuss legal and ethical issues that might arise. For example, laws and regulations that might be relevant to your specific product, and potential ethical issues that might be involved in manufacturing, selling, or using the product that you're proposing. And finally, the measurement of results. Specifically, how and when results will be measured. For example, are you going to measure results only at the end of the marketing plan, or do you want to do some sort of intermediate milestone measurements like every quarter or at some point during the implementation of the marketing plan? And what marketing metrics do you think might be appropriate to measure your marketing objectives? And make sure that those marketing metrics and that evaluation is tied in to section 3A. And let me go very quickly to that. That is the marketing objectives. That is, for example, if one of my objectives is to increase market share, then in the last part, I have to measure market share to make sure that I achieve that specific objective. If my objective is sales, then I have to measure the results in terms of sales to make sure that I achieve the sales benchmark that I established in my marketing objective. So there has to be a clear correspondence and a clear linkage between the marketing objectives and the measurement of the results sections. Okay, so I think that's all I have to say about the marketing plan. I hope that this was informative. And if you have any questions about the marketing plan when you're going over the whatever sections you have worked on, or you're fine tuning or putting it all together, send me an email and I'll be very happy to answer that for you. Let me just check quickly here if we have any questions from our live participants, who I really thank for attending this meeting, this live meeting. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I know it's late, especially for those of you on the East Coast, so I appreciate it even more. I don't see any questions here, so I'm just going to end our session. And again, if you have any questions, please let me know. Good luck on your final term. This is the last sprint of the course, so let's make sure that we ended up on a good note. So thank you very much, and have a good night or a good day, depending on when you're watching this recording. Thank you.